Well, folks, thank you for hopping on. Again, my name is Munoz, Gustavo. I am a senior account executive here at BusPlanner. So what does that mean? It means that I talk with folks that are interested in learning more about our system, that are maybe struggling with their existing system, or maybe they've never done routing before and they want to get in the weeds on it, and I help show them the BusPlanner suite. I am joined today by Matthew Hayes, or we call him Matt. Matt, I don't know if you want to give a brief introduction about your history and what you do over here as well.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Hayes. I work for BusPlanner as a customer success manager now. Previously, I was supervisor of transportation for a district here in Northeast Florida, Clay County. And before that, I've done logistics. I always joke when I say I've done planes, trains, and automobiles. So if it's logistics, I've probably touched it. But I absolutely loved my time with K-12 transportation, and wanted to continue on my career here with BusPlanner. So I was very happy to come on after that. So that's kind of my background, and just kind of like to share what I learned about logistics and how we can make it fit into K-12 transportation.
Completely agree, and we're glad to have you, Matt. So appreciate you hopping on today. And again, folks, thank you for hopping on today. We want to make this as productive as possible for you. Enjoy your time. In the summer, there's not really a lull in K-12 transportation. I tell folks, or I joke with folks, that like usually your only break is like the week between Christmas and New Year's. And even then, if you can get that off, you're lucky. There are some folks now that are out of office, like this week, they're trying to take advantage before start of school starts rolling around, and it is coming already. Yeah. K-12 is definitely, or I'm sorry, pupil transportation is definitely a 12-month thing. Unlike 9-10 months you see on the curriculum side. But anyways, you all know that already. So I want to get in the weeds here today. Excited to have this conversation with Matt, where you've got a broad subject category we're going to cover. We're going to roll through it pretty quickly, I think, but also we want to drill down on things that are very important for you folks. There is a Q&A at the end. My team here will let me know as questions pop in. I will not be able to see it as we're going through, but that's okay. We'll get you answers. There's also a poll in here as well that we'll go through. So to recap what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about your fleet, some of the state of the industry, things that we've done from like BusPlanner's research. We're going to talk about periodic maintenance, parts and inventory, managing spend, using software, reports that matter, how teams use it, people and payoff, and then that Q&A to close it up. So looking forward to our chat today. Here is a breakdown from Matt. Matt, in his capacity as a supervisor, really got in the weeds on vehicles, on maintaining those vehicles, on getting the best bang for your buck, right? Out of the tools that you already have at your disposal and out of the budget you already have. Based on some research, we wanted to say, hey, where do your fleet dollars actually go? And so I guess we'll start with the lowest up, right, Matt? Insurance and admin, about 8%. Vehicles and capital, 12% for maintaining, right? Maintenance and parts, 15 points. Fuels, 20% of your labor and drivers, 45%. Paying the people that drive the vehicles around takes a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Tied into that is our driver shortage challenges we were just talking about, right? 60% of districts cite driver shortages as being their top challenge. And tied into that is not just hiring new drivers, but it's retaining those drivers. Matt, would you say this is a good breakdown of like fleet costs, expenses?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Labor is always going to be your biggest one. So efficiency is always key when it comes to that. So I would say this is definitely accurate.
And not even just on the driver's side, right? But also we'd be remiss not to mention inside the garage itself, finding good mechanics, paying those good mechanics as well. Mm-hmm. And so Matt, really want to get in the weeds with you today about your experience, about things and suggestions and tips you have for the folks that are on the call this afternoon or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. So I would love to learn more about the size and the scale of the operation you worked in, what kind of vehicles you folks had, the fuel types, and how did you folks go about like routing and really getting the weeds
fleet maintenance and all that. Yeah. So we ran 184 bus routes. We did that with about 200 buses. We operated 3 vans for some of our more challenging ones where we might have to go into more rural areas or maybe some hard to reach Macento runs to go pick up those stops. We also ran a pretty sizable fleet of our ESE here in Florida. We call our special needs ESE. So our ESE buses, or our lift buses and whatnot, I think we had 56 of those. It was 100% diesel fleet other than the vans. So we had a big 10,000 gallon diesel tank in 2 locations for them to fill up at. That was kind of like the gist of it. We operated in a same capacity that a lot of you might have, where you had a driver and a monitor for your ESC runs, and just a driver for the regular ed runs too. So we had roughly a 184 plus 56, so 250-ish employees that we would go out every morning.
Nice. Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
you breaking it down. I think it's always helpful to set the stage. Folks that run extremely large operations might be running it differently than folks that have, very small operations. We'll call it like 3, 5 buses or something like that. Now, I know in your role at BusPlanner now, though, you are helping folks of all those sizes, right? Whether they're 1,000+ vehicles or just a handful of vehicles. But I really think that experience that you have helps you translate that quite a bit.
Yeah,
And help.
absolutely.
Now, also going back to your time in the district office
Mhm.
or in the transportation office, would love to talk about the age of your vehicles. So not just, hey, it sounds like you were driving all diesels more or less, but did you have an older fleet? Did you have a newer fleet? What was your makeup?
We were fortunate that we had a newer fleet. Back in 2020, there was a grant that came out that helped Clay County purchase a bunch of buses. So we did a one-time purchase of 100 buses. So you can imagine that would be it kind of throws our retirement and purchasing out of whack a little bit. So those are challenges that we had to face too, because when you buy 100 buses, you're not really adjusting for like 5% of your fleet every year.
Yeah,
But they're starting to get back on schedule there now. But that was it was nice to have new buses. They're all air conditioned buses. But we did have some of our older buses were the lift buses. So our ESE fleet was a little bit older. Sometimes we'd have some 2012s in there, had some 2017s in there. And you can just kind of see where the purchases came from, where the grant money was based on the year of the buses that were in there.
gotcha.
So mostly new, some older.
Yeah. In some places, they have pretty firm fixed depreciation schedules. So it's like,
Mhm.
I will have this vehicle for X amount of years and afterwards I will sell it. You have some of the states where it's like the state owns the vehicle fleet. I think like in the Carolinas. In your case, did you have, or across Florida, did you have like a fixed depreciation schedule where you should be replacing vehicles on the XYZ date, or how did it work for you folks?
I believe that we try to keep ours under 12 years. But it was more of a schedule where we try to replace 5% every year. So we want to get rid of 5% of our oldest buses, replace them with the newest buses every year. That's typically what we would focus on, or started to
Okay.
focus on.
Gotcha. And so, that's the big emphasis of what we want to talk about today, right? Is extending out those ones that are getting towards, I'm not going to call it end of life, but the ones that are getting a little more tired. Maybe that's the better way to put it. And so when we're identifying, right, so when you have a fleet of new vehicles, right, you're talking about you got 100 new buses, it's really easy to juxtapose that and compare it to the ones that are a little older, your ESC buses, your special needs buses with the lift gates. So let's talk about trouble spots. Like, it sounds to me like those older vehicles, particularly the ones that have more moving parts, like the lift gate buses, might be giving you a little more heartache. Did you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, they did. So the older buses would typically break down a little bit quicker than our newer buses in there, or we'd have more often breakdowns in there. Our shop was really, really awesome about keeping everything maintained on a periodical maintenance schedule. So it was really awesome to watch them do that. Sometimes you just can't help the breakdown, but those guys really did a whole lot to make sure that the bus was running every day.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, kids got to get to school, right? And that planning of the work that needs to be done also requires quite an attention to detail, right? Or at least a keen eye on it. And sounds like it's awesome you had a great team that was doing that. And I know they still are doing great work over there. Booking it, whether it's like calendar based or like hourly based, or I know in Florida, you folks have that, 30 school days versus 30 calendar days for some of your reports, right? Or for some of your tests.
Periodic maintenance schedules, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's important to call out. Okay, and then so how many of those older vehicles you had in your fleet, your 2012s, your 2017s, how many of those were you pushing into spare territory?
We really didn't push a whole lot of those particular ones into spare, but we did keep a lot of our like 65 passengers as spare. So our 20, or if there was a little bit of a smaller bus that we could use as a spare, if we knew we had the space, we'd keep a spare. Would keep it on hand. When it came to the ESC buses, we typically like to have 2 buses set up in the same way. That way, they each almost kind of had like a ground spare.
Yeah.
That way, if the wheelchair bus went out, or a wheelchair bus broke down, we knew we had the exact same setup in another bus, so we can go just pull the equipment out, maybe the vest and some straps, and we can go put that other bus in operation.
Easier to transition over or substitute is, sort of the language we use, right? All right, I'm gonna ask you one last question on this one. When you know it's time to call it, like, what is the criteria for when a bus is kind of,
When it's had its days,
yeah,
you're going to look at several factors. You're going to see like how much money have we spent on this bus. So you might want to pull some data to see what your average cost is for maintenance, and see where like the top percentile of maintenance costs are going into. So those ones might be the ones you want to look at first. Also, if you just don't have a need for a particular type of bus anymore, here in Clay County, we're growing like crazy. 65 passenger buses really don't cut it anymore. We had to go up to 77. So if it's not going to fit in a way that's going to help us, then those are the ones we're going to start looking at first to get rid of.
makes sense. And kind of excited to talk about that today. And so, we promised to talk about periodic maintenance, and we alluded to this quite a bit on the last bits of conversation here. But staying on schedule to keep your buses, safe, and making sure that what might be a small problem that could be nipped in the bud with maintenance doesn't become a very large, very expensive bill for folks. And so, what I have here is a couple pieces of advice. Right, stick to schedule, catch the problems early, track every service, and plan the downtime. And so I kind of want to hear your thoughts as you look through this list to think about, how did you go about doing this? Like, how did you maintain discipline to stick to the schedule to start?
Yeah. So like I said, our shop is fantastic. I absolutely love everybody in that shop. But we definitely had that 30 school day schedule. It was something that was to be done by state statute. So like there was no option. We had to get that done. But the things that we would do is a lot of times we'd pull the buses in maybe a couple days early just to make sure that we had enough time to get those buses back out. So instead of running on a 30-day schedule, maybe we run on a 28-day schedule. That way we know we have time if something does come up on the bus to get it back out at the 30-day time. With that periodic maintenance, so that's where you're going to catch those problems early. So make sure that we had our maintenance guys were always doing their inspections appropriately. We had our shop managers going in behind them, make sure that everything was checked off. So that definitely helped a lot. The full maintenance history is also very, very, very important for a couple reasons. So we have to keep that history in Florida for, I believe it was 2 or 3 years. And that is very important because if your bus gets into a crash, they're going to want every detail of that bus. So we were able to pull any incidents that we'd have, would be able to pull up anything that would pertain to that bus over that time span. So that was really nice. And we could get it all in one place. We can just go and pull everything up all in one place, print it all out, and we can give it to the powers that be who wants it. And then as far as the downtime, we scheduled things. We had a two shift shop, so they would come in at 4:30, and then our last guys would leave out about 7 p.m. or so. And so they would do all of the maintenance in the middle of the day. So we ran a 3-tier system: high school, elementary, junior high. All the buses come back. There are no park outs here in Clay. Maintenance would be done in the middle of the day. They would go back out for their afternoon runs. Anything that wasn't done would be cleaned up at the end of the day.
Okay, gotcha. So in the middle of the day is when you were performing the work. Did you ever have to rotate out, like, hey, we're going to pull some of these, put the spares back out there to do your maintenance tasks? Or is that, like, it sounds like you had 10% or so of your vehicles are spare, so you didn't have a large loop or rotation to be able to move vehicles in and out of. But yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the spares in there. During the inspections, we really didn't have a whole lot coming out of service unless there was something that was just absolutely dire. But yeah, those spares were still there just in case, and we always like to keep those spares on hand, also just in case we get a flat tire. Sometimes it's easier just to go out there and replace the bus and wait for that tire to get replaced.
I'm glad you mentioned, like, if it's absolutely dire, then we need to do this on an emergency basis, because there are there's different levels of this, right? It's like you're doing a pre and post trip inspection, or you're doing a pre-trip inspection, right? And I'm going through my list and I'm like, okay, I have these 15, 20 things I need to check out. Everyone kind of does it a little different, but broad strokes, most people have the same bones on their pre-trip inspections. Yeah, check your lights, check your hoses, kick your tires, right? And so, but some of those problems you might have a problem that pops up that's like pretty small, right? And it's like, hey, flag this for my maintenance team, and it might have different levels of like severity. It might be like, hey, I noticed, and I'm struggling to think of an example. I noticed that there's like a small bend or a small dent, on the side of the bus, but we probably shouldn't pull that bus out of commission right now. Versus like, hey, the back right tire is flat. Like, I see a nail in it. Like, if I try to drive on this, everyone's going to be in a lot of danger. So we should pull this immediately and get on this as soon as we can. When I think about catching problems early, and I think about trying to scale that severity, I think it's important to give people flexibility on that, right? Did you guys have a mechanism to do things like that, to catch, like, maybe we should do maintenance now, maybe we should do maintenance later, this bus is safe to drive, this bus is unsafe to drive?
Yeah, sure. So we could defer some of the maintenance as long as it wasn't a safety issue. So like what you're saying, like the dent and whatnot, like that would just be deferred maintenance. But really, those pre-trip inspections were gold to us to make sure that we're hitting all of those safety standards there day in and day out. So we use the drivers a lot just to make sure that their buses are safe to operate. And if there was a no-go on it, then we call the shop, we start the process, get that bus in the shop, get it fixed, put them in a spare, and keep on rolling.
As it should be. Alrighty. Now, one thing that really costs a lot of money is your parts, right? And there's a fine balance between making sure that you have everything you need to get the work done, but also like not having too much on the shelves, because that does cost tangible dollars, particularly for parts that are a little rarer, or parts that you don't use all that often. Now, immediately post-COVID, right, we were all buying everything we can get our hands on because everything was back ordered into oblivion. The supply chains have gotten better over the last 6 years. You'd be surprised though, there's still a lot of shortages all the time on various products. But I want to ask you about that, how you thought about that, stocking your shop, stocking the garage, making sure people had the parts they need, but also not having too many dollars sitting in inventory, hurting the budget of the district.
Yeah, so those are all really fantastic points, because keeping too much stock does cost a lot of money in a couple ways, because not only are you purchasing stock that might sit there for a while and collect dust, but it also takes square footage inside of your building too. So when you think about that square footage, you also have to keep it heated or cooled. You have to keep shelving in there. You have to maintain safety cameras. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that you have to maintain in there. So your costs, when you're dealing with inventory, come from several different places. So in our shop, we had ours pushed down pretty much just a one storeroom. We had, can't remember exactly, I want to say it was 550 or 600 unique bar-coded items. And so we might have like 20 filters on hand, or maybe we only need 5 brake shoes, whatever it could be. So we were always trying to adjust everything that we could based on the need of it. Sometimes you get a little, you find a part that will start failing constantly in your fleet. I'm sure we've all been on the call. We've all been there before, where one particular part just broke 40 times throughout the fleet, and you're just trying to get that figured out. So we would manage it as best we could. But in our room, we did min-max. We kept it pretty simple. So with our min-max system, so if we were down to say 3 filters, we knew to order 10. So that's how we kept everything stocked up there. It's the simplest way to do it. It's the easiest to train. You're not trying to be a supply chain analyst when you're doing things like that. So it's easy to train people up to keep things rolling on a min-max schedule.
Right. So in your example, you're talking about brake shoes. It's like or filters, right? I have less than 3 filters now. I know I'm going to run through these. I know I'm going to make it up 10 a month. Maybe that's too low, but I know I use 10 a month. So let's order more. And then you could say, but I also don't want to have 500 on the shelf. And so that's what your max is in this situation. It's like, I've gone below my minimum of how many I want to have, but I also don't want to pre-order over my maximum, so then I'm just wasting dollars.
Exactly.
And that's like adjustable, right? I mean, like I feel as though in Clay or in whatever district you're at, right? Maybe in your other example, you were saying there's a piece that keeps breaking all over the fleet. Maybe you're invested in just like one particular bus type, and there's a part that keeps failing on you. Maybe you want to adjust that. Maybe you want more on hand because you're going through that. And being able to track that, I think, goes a very long way.
Absolutely.
Let's talk vendors. I don't want to name any names because I don't want to offend anyone, or I don't want to give anyone too much love either. But vendors and sourcing, right? So how did you think about, when you're keeping your shelves stocked, how do you think about the vendors that you worked with, the partners, where you got that inventory from?
Keep more than one vendor for all your parts. That is the big key to that one. So if you have a particular a part on your shelf, I'm sure that you can find it at 2 or 3 vendors. There's a couple reasons for this. I've seen where one vendor might be 50% cheaper than the other vendor for the exact same part number. I mean, not even just like a close part number, but the exact same part number. So when you're trying to keep track of those things, it's really important that your software will also align with that. So you want to be able to keep up with the those vendors, the cost per part number, to make sure that you're ordering the cheapest thing first, because you're going to want to order or call those guys first before you call anyone else.
I think those partnerships are really important. The reliability of those partnerships are really important. In the example, one might be selling something 50% off or 50% cheaper than the other. That's awesome. But if you over-index on them and then they end up selling out of all their parts and you don't have a relationship with another provider, now it's going to take you a while to restock, right?
Yep.
My original first job out of college was I worked for an electrical supply house, and there were very few times that we had 100% of an entire electrical contractor or general contractor's business, because it is a best practice just to use different vendors, to have different providers on things that have long lead times, i.e. parts, materials. I was doing like Omex and conduit and things like that, and sometimes it was very hard to get a hold of that. And when people could find a deal, they would clear out your whole warehouse. And all of a sudden, the other people that need it are scrambling for it. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's talk about managing spend. So maintenance dollars, we're spending quite a few of them. How do we keep them in check? How do we make sure that it's not run away? Obviously, we set a budget at the beginning of the year, or we aim for a budget at the beginning, and it's constantly changing. With the prices of everything going through the roof, and materials, right, just changing every day, and who's got what changing every day. Let's talk about best practices to manage that spend. So what I have here is know your cost drivers. So tracking your maintenance dollars. How did you folks go about tracking your maintenance spend? How did you know where your dollars were going?
That's a big answer.
I want big answers.
So,
yes, I want complicated is better, because that's what folks on the call are experiencing in their day-to-day life.
Right. Yeah. So that one's always a challenge. I mean, it's almost like playing whack-a-mole sometimes when you see these cost drivers changing as much as they do. So it's where do we see the maintenance dollars? It's more of understanding the ebbs and flows, I guess. I mean, that's really the best thing I can really say. It's like, just understand the ebbs and the flows. Make sure that you have good relationships with people in your counties or your school district, so you know how to move money appropriately. And you're not coming up short on anything. Also, just keep track of where the spend is actually going, because you might have those parts that break and they might not be under warranty. So you're trying to figure out how to fix something that is not warranted. Keep track of those things. Document everything. I mean, it's just there's so much to do there, basically.
There's so much data that floats around, right? Like my fuel costs are changing on a day-to-day basis. My part costs are changing on a day-to-day basis. My labor might be changing substantially. I might be understaffed, right? Which means a lot of overtime for my existing staff. Or maybe I have to pay everyone a little more to retain them. And so those costs are always in fluctuation. Obviously, the cost of vehicles are also going up just in general, and the deferment schedule, the payment schedules on those. So much in flux. Knowing your dollars, I think, goes a long way. And it feels as though every time you think you get one under control, there's like, you said whack-a-mole. I think that's a great analogy. It's like the steam pipes in my head, right? It's like now a new source is popping up with a new rising cost. But if you don't know your numbers cold, you might have a bunch of holes that you weren't even aware of. There might be the whole field might be full of moles, and you're kind of flying blind when you got to get after it. This is kind of circling back to what we talked about a little earlier, but plan versus firefighting, right? Planning the work, trying to not defer a lot of maintenance. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that a bit, Matt.
It's always plan everything that you can. Firefighting is always bad, no matter what you're doing in the logistics or transportation in general. Firefighting is always bad. It's always there. You're always going to deal with it. But it's the thing that we're constantly chasing. Once we know that we're not firefighting anymore, we know that we are being successful. So just plan everything that you can. Don't defer too much. Don't defer too much of the same stuff unless you're absolutely forced to, because you don't want to have to do the same maintenance over and over again, especially if it's something that's timely or costly.
I think transportation is as a profession is a field of firefighters. You never know what's going to happen on a bus. It's just the name of the game. And so if you can prevent fires on the maintenance side, that'll save you dollars, right? Because the cheaper work now will save you a lot of money on having to buy a new bus or having to do a large project. let's talk repair versus replace. So I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the call, but identifying when it's time to maybe sell off a bus or retire a bus. I think we can chalk that up to just tracking your full spend, right? Knowing how much it really costs me to run these vehicles. This is a bad analogy, but my dad runs a plumbing company. And so I kind of grew up down here in San Diego in the back of a plumbing truck. And my dad has about 5 plumbers that work under him. And there's like 10 vehicles. And all the time I'm asking him, I'm like, hey, some of these trucks haven't moved in many years. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like I have them in case of emergencies. I was like, I think one of these trucks hasn't moved since I was a teenager, which has been a very long time. I know I have a baby face, but and so I sat down with him and did the math, and that like vehicle, that van that's sitting there, it's untouched. Between registration, between every time he does go to fire it up, it's like there's a battery issue, the engine's running funny now, the transmission's weird now. Like it has cost him several thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to sit there. And so might be time to replace it. I haven't won that piece of the argument yet, but he never quite knew the numbers, right? And so we had to sit down and do the math for it to really become stark and become clear. And same thing goes with your fleet. You might have, and I know you are reporting numbers often, but you might have some vehicles that you keep as spares that might not be super helpful for you these days.
Especially if you're holding on to your white fleets too. So if you are in a school district where you are also maintaining the white fleet and you're not fortunate enough to have some of these other companies who are maintaining and registering and you're basically leasing them out from them, you'll notice that a lot of those white fleets are just kind of sitting around the district and they're doing exactly what your dad's van was doing. It's just kind of sitting there collecting dust. You grab it up once a year, you do your PM on it, and you send it back out just so it can go sit again. And so those are some parts of the school district that you should definitely keep track of if you are maintaining your white fleet. Make sure those things are getting rotated out and make sure they're not sitting when they don't need to be sitting. To ask questions if you see anything sitting.
100%. That helps you, I guess, knowing your numbers cold, wanted to hear, that helps you defend the budget, right? So if you don't know your numbers, it's really hard to justify your numbers. You got to know your numbers cold. Can I ask you, Matt, about your preparation and how often you were looking at the numbers and checking in to make sure that you knew it like the back of your hand?
Pretty frequently enough, because I would still get questions from the higher ups from the outside the transportation department, your assistant superintendents, whatnot. So if they are asking those questions, you never really want them to wait around for an answer. Answer it confidently, answer it correctly, and just be ready for that question at all times.
Exactly. All right. Let's talk about bringing software in. And so, did you work pre-software? I guess this is an important question to ask. Were you ever a pen and paper shop, or have you ever worked in a pen and paper shop?
So I've not in school bus transportation. Back in my youth, when I was still an aircraft mechanic, it was on pen and paper still, but not as the time when I was with school bus transportation. We were on Excel though, and Excel kind of gets lost, or Google Sheets rather, but same difference. But the we noticed that there would be some breakages in those spreadsheets. Somebody might not have an updated version or whatnot, and that was kind of a challenge.
Makes a lot of sense. When you started using like software tools, how did you get folks off those Excel sheets? How did you get them bought into doing something else, to a different workflow?
Yeah, just it's talking, it's training, it's learning, there's really no like smoking gun answer to that. You just have to show people that this is the right way to do things. We have to show people that this is the easier way to do things. Collecting that data is really, really important. And so whenever you have to, if you have somebody that's kind of stuck on the old system, we just have to pull them in and show them why what we're doing is what we're doing. And it's just a day in and day out process basically. And they tend to come around because once they see everybody else around them using it, then the adoption rate goes up and everybody gets happier with it. And also make the system easy to use for them. So like in my shop, if you want to win people over, you have to put it in places that make sense. So we started using terminals instead of making them go into their break room to do their clocking in and clocking out. So I put terminals out in the shop so we could actually do things or make those documentation changes as they are happening right there on the shop floor.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think that reducing friction to get people getting the full extent of a system is extremely helpful. That's step one. I completely agree with you. There's no smoking gun or there's no silver bullet on this, but it's a lot of things. It's showing the additional love and training. It's reminding folks on a daily basis. Sometimes you get folks that are just like hesitant of any new technology. Some folks still don't send emails, right? That's just the name of the game, particularly like in this industry. But so what matters is showing them, how it can make life easier too, instead of just kind of talking about it and saying theoretically we could do X, Y, Z. There always tends to be some moment, and everyone's kind of on a different timeline for this, but there's always some moment where it clicks for people. Sometimes it's like I'll be doing a demo because I demo the routing software and I demo some of these things, right? And there's like an aha moment where there's like an unlock. And sometimes you're going through the implementation, a driver, signing into the tablet for the first time, they have this like aha moment. A garage, a mechanic in the garage has this aha moment when they first scan. Sometimes it takes people a little bit to come around on it too. But once you get someone to that aha moment, oh, this is going to be so much easier, or oh, this makes so much sense to me. I think that's when it really clicks for people, and that's when they become power users.
And it's a favorite moment too. There's nothing that I like more than demoing out something and they go, oh, that's easier, and then we solve the problem. It makes me happy, makes them happy, everybody's happy.
It is. I think my favorite part of the job. All right, so let's talk nuts and bolts of fleet maintenance. And so we've talked about your fleet and what you did over at Clay. If you're okay with talking about sort of broadly, generally, the fleets you've worked with now, sort of the interactions you have, and the variety of those vehicles, that would be great.
Yeah. So nowadays, you talk with BusPlanner and the clientele that we have now. I mean, it is just absolutely wildly diverse. We have buses or some fleets with 28 buses. We have some with 3,400 vehicles. We have some clients with motorcycles and boats, and school districts with motorcycles and boats. They're police vehicles or boats that are getting kids off islands or anything like that. It's kind of neat what I've seen coming over from BusPlanner, especially when we were just using a 100% diesel fleet. And just kind of to see the different ways that transportation is used throughout the country is really eye-opening.
I know. I mean, so particularly the culture shock maybe is not a proper term, but the variance in fleets, right? When you think about like running full diesel versus like the gasoline, the propanes, all the different types of EVs we're seeing out there today. It's pretty cool stuff, but yeah, wildly different. Every time you tell me about motorcycles and boats, it like boggles my mind. But also, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, look, those things need maintenance too, and they need to be tracked.
Yep.
Let's talk about as well improving operations. And so we kind of recapped some of this, right? So safety first is something I do want to very much drill in on, though. We already talked about keeping it, retire it, getting the team on board and bought in. Talking about, I'll circle back to this on how far we've come, but let's talk safety. How do you measure safety? And I kind of alluded to this as well earlier in regards to deferring maintenance, in regards to severity if we have something that shows up on a pre-trip or a post-trip. How did your team go about measuring these things? Obviously, safety is always top of mind. But,
yeah, safety is top of mind. I mean, if something is in an unsafe condition, I mean, your number one priority is to keep your students safe and keep your staff safe. So, I mean, if something is deemed unsafe, it immediately comes out. Like it just has to figure out something else. So safety is first, and like you said, there, safety is always, and it's something that will always have to be measured. So whenever we're thinking about bus maintenance or any repairs that might need to be coming up, the question is going to have to be, is it safe for student? Is it safe for employees? If the answer is no, it's done. We're going to get it fixed.
Earlier, we were talking about, sometimes you might have a vehicle and or you might buy a series of vehicles that all have like similar challenges. So you have to keep replacing specific parts. Did you measure that at all? Did you check in to say like, hey, okay, we're having a number of these issues, which would lead to safety issues across these types of vehicles. So maybe we're a little more hesitant to buy those vehicles again next time. Or did you ever encounter anything like that?
Nothing that would make it so we wouldn't buy an entire type of vehicle. But there are certain things where like maybe we won't pull parts from a particular vendor anymore. No, we're noticing that these particular part numbers are the ones that are breaking versus, or maybe something that's made a part number made during this time, this date range is breaking more than others. So those are things that we would try to keep track of. And those really helpful answers, for us.
Makes a lot of sense. And even if we take a step back from the fleet maintenance of it all, or the fleet, the garage components of it all, just tracking things like accidents that have occurred on the vehicles, which drivers that might have occurred with, which roads those are happening on. I feel like those are also important things to call out that we should be tracking and monitoring.
Absolutely.
Like if I have a segment of road, for example, that like a lot of my runs run through, and that's like accidents keep occurring, and most people have a gut feeling of where they know these like maybe more dangerous is too harsh of a term, but where there's like more accident prone areas, like we have good data on this, right? But it's also good to like codify it and write that down, and maybe we make those like hazard boundaries or something on the routing side.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. So you were saying, you've worked in places, aircraft mechanic. Matt has a deep history, I think, of, as you were talking about, planes, trains, and automobiles. But can we talk about how far we've come? K-12 transportation and student safety and tracking of fleet maintenance here and the yellow buses.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. It wasn't even that long ago that we were on paper and pen. It was a little bit before my K through 12 transportation time, but even talking to people that I worked within the school system, it wasn't that long ago that they were still even routing on a map with string and push pins, and they were doing fleet maintenance literally just on paper and keeping everything in files, and we would have to go and take those files every year to a special place in the school district that was fireproof and safe, and now we get to keep everything in a database, and everything that's easily found and retrievable.
I do think that I don't know the name of the companies that sell filing cabinets, but I feel as though they're not doing as well as they used to. All right, let's talk about reports that matter. So we've talked a lot throughout this entire session on saving money, on processes, on knowing your numbers. But knowing your numbers and knowing all these things require reports. Yeah, you need to read the number, right? You need to pull the data. There's so much that we're recording, but now you need to report it. You need to monitor it. And so I don't want to know the specific names of each report that you were pulling and whatnot, but I do want to know broad strokes, like what were you gunning for? What information were you looking for? Like what could you never give up on a report?
Yeah, there's going to be the things that trends. I mean, that my big thing was always just trying to find trends in something. So the dashboards are always super fantastic to help do that with. So if you want to see like the amount of fuel over a 6-month period, or the cost of fuel over a 6-month period, or you want to see what parts were replaced under warranty, or how much are we paying a certain vendor to replace or to repair white fleets downtown. Those are the types of reports that were always really helpful and always help make my leadership make decisions too. Like, do we keep white fleet in our purview, or do we let somebody else maintain this? So there is just a huge amount of reports that we would use, and it fluctuates quite a bit. So yeah, basically, if I can find trends in anything with the reporting, that's what I was mostly excited to see.
I think that's a great answer for it, because it's kind of a loaded question to say what report could you live without. Sorry, it's transportation. There's like 100 things minimum that you need to be monitoring. But yeah, trends. I think if I had one takeaway from this entire call, it's monitor trends. Is the chart going up the right way? Is it going down on the right things we want to measure? Is it staying flat? Making that data dance that way and looking at it in a way that's very intuitive that you can quickly glean insights from is worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely.
Here's a little spiel on BusPlanner. Spiel, the word I was looking for.
That's good.
Yeah, we do a lot in here, right? So think of map information. So what I was talking about, like tracking on dangerous roads, hazard boundaries, things that help with your routing. Fleet maintenance is what we've talked about today. So tracking fleet maintenance, performance, Jeeps. So kind of enhancing some of that information, right? Our driver behavior, engine diagnostics popping up on the vehicle, so you can pre-order parts or pull a vehicle out of their run or routes to schedule some maintenance or get emergency maintenance performed. Idling, of course, that's always the first thing people talk about with rising fuel costs is like, how do I get my fuel costs down? Idling is always a big one. That one's been around for a while. Financial tracking, so tracking your costs for all these things. And then we have this element of what we call turns, which is our turn-by-turn system. So telling the drivers the right way to go, so they're not adding miles or taking the long way around, and also getting updates, if there are changes. So if you do have to go back to the shop, we can tell the driver immediately, not always relying on a radio. Matt, I kind of want to hand it to you for this sort of recap. Your people in the payoff is what I called this one. It's what I think is a best practice, but I would love to hear, you sort of work your way through this screen and what you think are best practices. And if I'm missing anything big, like how do we improve maintenance operations? I think you could chart it up to four things. Give your teams more ownership, celebrate the wins, stay ahead of the problems, and make the day happen. Make it click. Get everyone bought in. Onto knowing their numbers and doing the best process. Am I off the mark on this?
No, I think this is a great thing to consider whenever we're doing these changes. Like, you have to give your people this ownership to do things, because if you don't give people ownership, then there's really no buy-in from them. So they have to understand why they're doing these things. They have to understand their role in it and why they are important to the role and to the system, because we all have to work together. And always celebrate the wins. Take care of your people. So it's celebrate the wins and make sure that everybody sees the good that we're doing out there, and stay ahead of the problems. Keep track of your buses that need the periodic maintenance, get things fixed, and it'll all come together. I think it's good.
Completely agree. Alrighty. Matt and I are very appreciative to have you on the call today. Thank you so much. We do monthly webinar series, so would love to have you sign up again. Next month is going to be on student safety, specifically speaking with some safety experts. Would love to have y'all attend. Feel free to share with your friends. This will be available once we publish it online. And so keep an eye out for that if you want the online version or the uploaded version. You can see on BusPlanner's YouTube page. We have a number of videos. You can also always go to busplanner.com to view our previous webinars and see whether it's myself or Binford Sloan or Scott Den, members of our team hosting these webinars. So we appreciate your time. We know it's a lot to ask of transportation to carve out an hour. And so thank you for hopping on. Matt, I don't know if you have any parting thoughts.
No, thanks for doing the webinar. And I appreciate everybody showing up and getting on this call with us.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Appreciate it, and take care.